Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jarno Elovirta and Robert Andersen and Roger Sheen.
We are supposed to have news and announcements.
You do it.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Good point.
Yes. Roger, anything to add? No, I think this is traditionally the point where we surprise everybody by announcing a new release. Are we ready to do that yet, do you think?
Didn't we want to talk about the old stuff first?
Oh yeah, old stuff. Okay, so we had a release in the spring. Actually a little bit earlier than usual this year. Our general pattern for the last few years has been to release basically around June and then again surprise everybody at DITA-OT Day. We did it a little bit earlier this year. Went back and looked over the notes because it seems so long ago now. I think it was into February, start of March. And I was surprised to see how much we'd actually put into that release. Made some notes about that here. Anybody out there upgraded to 3.2 yet? Or sorry, 3.3? That was the 3.3 release. We got a few nods, good. I was expecting everybody to raise their hand.
We're done here.
Let's see, going through some of the highlights of that release. Rotating tables, we finally caught up with a DITA 1.3 markup change that was added, rotating table entries, depending on your PDF formatter of choice. They all work a little differently there. There was something about Java service loaders that sounded very techy.
It's a way to insert Java code into the integration process. I added that in order to play with a thing, and now you can play with things and share them. It's not perfect. You're forced to run the integrator twice to get the final output, but it allows you to hook into the integration process. So previously, you've just been able to add your plugin.xml and it defines a set of extension points and templates and features, meaning use of extension points. Now you're able to hook into the process with Java code and to modify something in the OT installation. Most people won't use this for anything, but if you're in the IT department and you want to do funky things with your users setup, this allows you to do that. I'm not presenting on any of the things I toyed around with. I can just tell you the results. It's not faster. And that's why I'm not presenting on the project.
If you use the microphone
On the paper it makes noises,
yeah.
so I should do that. Sorry, I know that being developers, we have a lot of cats in our presentation, and I've seen a little iTunes logo bouncing up and down, and I feel like I should reach out and try to catch it. But I'm struggling not to do that. So on with more 3.3 things. Last year at DITA-OT Day, Jarno showed off some formatting he'd done for PDF for hazard statement. That had been something added to the DITA Oasis standard quite a while ago without any real support anywhere. And everybody said, ooh, that looks nice. Where is it in HTML? So in 3.3, that appeared in HTML. HTML5 attribute sets was another highlight for developers who get in, added the ability to set attribute sets for a bunch of common elements. One that wasn't actually listed in our highlights, but I thought was kind of neat, was the truthy parameters. A lot of our parameters have been added over the last 15 years without much overall like design style guide kind of thing. Like we didn't say every time you add a parameter that's a binary thing, it should be true false. So we've got true false, yes, no, on, off, things like that that have been added by different people over different times. And now for the most part, they all work with any of those.
Can I say something about that?
Yes, please.
So this only works with the DITA command line tool, the DITA command. So if your plugin assumes that a given parameter takes yes, no, written in uppercase as values, you can just say true, and it will convert it into uppercase. Yes, this does not work with AND, or if you call OpenTool directly with AND. The DITA command is the main interface to using OT, so that's why it's only there. Also, doing this at AND level would have been somewhat difficult for backwards compatibility issues, and we never want to break your plugins if we don't have a really good reason to do that. So it only works in DITA command.
Last, kind of just a general comment about 3.3. It had a lot of fixes in it, like a lot more than usual.
You made a lot of things.
Yeah, I was busy. After our last presentation last year, we talked about the stale issues and the bug tracker and all these things, and I went in afterwards and ended up getting a lot of old things that I managed to fix. We also, through the year, had a lot more hot fixes than usual. And I think that's largely just because we released so long ago. You know, we usually release in the middle of the summer, and there's not time for many hot fixes before we get here. When we release at the end of February, there's time for quite a few. So we had 4, I think, maybe 5.
Something like that. Originally, when we started to talk about hotfixes and what the schedule for those should be, I was pressing hard on a 3-week
3-week, yeah.
schedule. So when the first hotfix lands, in 3 weeks we'll release. And if you want to get additional hotfixes in, you just need to do it within those 3 weeks. Now, I think we didn't follow the rules that closely because
It was pretty close.
Pretty close, but
Yeah.
like, no one's going to come and tell us that it took more than 3 weeks. So we could have had even more if we had followed the rules, but of course we have to think about Roger too.
Well, to be honest, I think I withheld a couple of fixes because I knew if I submit this thing now, it's going to start the 3-week clock, and then Jarno's going to expect us to release everything in 3 weeks, and I'm going on vacation, so I'm not going to say anything about this fix until I get back.
Yeah, that's the thing. I come from a background of pure software development. And with open source, it's common for different, for example, JavaScript libraries to come up with patches every other day. So the 3 weeks for me feels like a really long time, and being able to release a proper version every 6 months feels really bad, because even your Firefox or Chrome browser releases a new version every 6 weeks. So we're not going to change the half a year release cycle, I think, but trust us that we would like to release more often and give you the updates and fixes.
Yeah, I come from the software development thing as well, and it feels like a long time, but I also have spent almost 20 years now supporting customers with client systems who don't like to update. And, you know, if you're doing continuous delivery where you're a service in the cloud, you know, a lot of those cloud systems release several times a day and you never know. Sometimes you're annoyed because something doesn't work the same, but it's really not in your hands. If it's up to you to download something, upgrade your software on your system, you're not going to do it that often. And I think releasing a lot more often doesn't seem too friendly for that case.
One thing I think we haven't discussed in previous years is that building OT is quite easy if you're a software developer. If you're not a software developer, it's still fairly easy. It's really just a couple of commands. And if you look at the development branch in Git, when we add new features, those may be broken in the beginning, and then we'll sort of incrementally fix them and make it work before the actual release. But existing features are rarely broken in the development branch. So if you support multiple people in your company, it's not that bad of an idea to just keep building the latest code and giving it to them every once in a while. You don't always have to wait for the official release. Again, it might be the software developer in me thinking we don't need the stamp of approval that this is version something. We just build the latest one. I encourage you to try it out.
So that's 3.3. The last hotfix was a few months ago, 2 months ago maybe. And then we started shifting towards the current one. When I look at the release notes for 3.4,
Did we release any bug fixes for 3.2? I don't remember.
Yeah, we did that. We did that after DITA-OT day. Yeah, but I don't remember what.
not many.
Okay.
I think we only had 1 or 2 hotfixes for 3.2. Again, with the shorter release cycle for that one in the spring, it's like you don't have time to get many out because we're not doing a lot over December, and yeah. So for 3.4, the next release, the bug fix list is not that long, and that's largely because we kept putting so many hot fixes out. Usually things would start to accumulate and just, particularly minor items there's no real rush. You know something's wrong, but nobody's really hitting this. It usually waits for the next release. With all the hot fixes, I got a lot of those out. So the hot fix list for actual final 3.4 stable release is kind of short. One of the main categories of issues there is indexing. And I can blame Leaf and the crowd for that, really.
Where is he?
He's hiding, yes. Leaf was going through our documentation and trying to improve our documentation, and that's always a way to test the edge cases of toolkit processing. Our documentation, thanks to Roger, generally tries to really test out a lot of our stuff. The use your own dog food thing. Well, let's see if we can make the docs use just about every feature. And we hadn't done much with indexing in the docs previously. And so Leaf started adding these terms all over the place. It's like, oh, looks like for years putting these terms, if you're using FOP, has been adding a lot of extra space. And if you use these C alsos, they don't come out right. And finding a lot of these things. And so then Roger kept nagging me. And so we have a big set of fixes related to indexing in this release. In addition to that, with indexing, Jarno decided to rewrite the whole indexing collation sort program.
I didn't. So OT has 2 code bases for index processing. One is in the main jar file, and the other one is in PDF2. The first one is used by HTML help
And Eclipse help.
And something like that.
And it used to be used by Java help, if anybody still remembers what that is.
Yeah. But it's way worse than the PDF2 one. So PDF2 has a lot more features, but it's bound to PDF2. So in a way, you couldn't use it anywhere outside PDF2. We would like to improve that code. So as a first step to do that, I took the indexing code from PDF2 and moved it to its own plugin. When you install the latest of the theoretically future version of OpenToolkit, when you install it into that, you'll notice that it's already there. So we're bundling this separated indexing plugin, and right now it doesn't do anything new. I just moved things around a bit, added tests. We didn't have a single test for those. And in the future, the goal is to allow developers to add their own sorting and grouping code. Right now you can configure it with your configuration file to say that these things that start with this character are in this group. Well, sometimes it's not that simple. So we're trying to add some sort of extension point there to allow you to do your custom grouping, whatever it will be, and then also sorting, because some languages are difficult to sort and you might not get the correct output with the default settings. So we're trying to make it easier to hook into that code so you don't have to overwrite the whole indexing code. You can just add your custom sort. This is mostly Asian languages. Hopefully this will be something that people can use.
So that's one of the 3.4 kind of under the covers things that you probably won't see directly, but will hopefully lead to some cool things. Another update for 3.4, we have our own Docker image. Docker's a pretty popular thing now, and we have that. if you don't know what Docker is or how you would use it with the toolkit. Elliot Kimber gave a talk on using Docker with DITA-OT a couple of years ago, and those are still online with recordings. And I think most of what he said in there would apply to the one that we've produced now.
I think the main difference between the one that we've produced now and what Elliot talked about in the past is that this one gets maintained. So Elliot produced that at a time when he needed it for a project, but it hadn't been updated, I think, in several years. So it was fine if you needed a Docker container of an old version of DITA Open Toolkit, and now this is integrated into our release process, so whenever we release a new version of DITA Open Toolkit, there will be a Docker container that supports that.
Writing your own Docker image for OT is not that difficult. It's a text file about that long. So you can do
what size font do you use for that?
12.
Okay.
On my screen.
Yeah.
So it's not difficult, but if you ask a non-DITA native developer to include Open Toolkit into your tool chain, they'll first go home, and then they start to cry a bit when they notice that it's actually quite challenging. Well, how do I do this now? By having a Docker image that they're familiar with, like the technology of Docker, it'll be easier for non-DITA native developers to adopt Open Toolkit into their tool chain, like in Jenkins or some other place.
More coming in 3.4. I think we found out, I think Wednesday, FOP released a new version, Tuesday or Wednesday, and Thursday somebody opened an issue against us saying, why haven't you included this yet? No, that's not how they put it. When are you going to include this? So we've Are you going to? Okay. Yeah, so we quickly got that into the release. We've done enough testing to see that, like I think you said the DITA-OT docs were identical binary output, so there was no change there. We did some more testing just to make sure that it worked. Otherwise, we don't really know what's in there, so we're not making a big deal about the upgrade. We know that that version of FOP enabled a pull request from Elliot Kimber to support change bars. We do not support that in the toolkit yet, because previously, if you tried to put change bars into your PDF, FOP would crash, and so we simply disabled that. We've now included this new version of FOP. We have not gone through all the code to re-enable all of the change bars, but that means we can now do that, and probably in one of our upcoming maintenance releases. Maybe in the next major release, if Jarno makes us hold it.
But FOP 2.4 probably also has bug fixes for FOP bugs, so we'll probably get better quality out.
And then George said something in his session that did a Europe about project files. I think we've got that coming.
Maybe we should talk about the cover page thing first, just because it's less interesting.
Have a cover page?
No, the HTML5, the ability to skip them.
Oh.
Right? How many of you have been annoyed by the fact that when you produce HTML output, you get extra files in your directory? Anyone seen that? Wondering why that happens? Right? There's a table of contents file that you really don't need. You can make that go away now. It's a really simple little thing, but for anyone who's really attached to a very pristine directory that contains nothing but referenced files, now you can have that.
I was going to say, I tend to want to copy random pictures of cats into people's output directories, and I get in trouble for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and 3 minutes, and I think we're done. So George is 3 minutes to dance.
What?
No, no. Well, so I think that as everybody entered the room, you presumably all got the menu that a surprise was coming, and to prepare for the surprise, you should all have your laptops open with the DITA-OT homepage. So now is the point at which you should hit refresh, and what will happen? Oh, a new release is there. So yes, 3.4 is released this morning, and that is the big surprise of the day, right?
Yep, so increment of the minor release, meaning it should not break anything backwards compatible.
So you're going to talk about project files later, and that's
Yes.
why we're not talking about it now.
That's right, yes. More will be coming on project files, and that's why we're not going into detail.
Yes.
Yes.